3 days floating in the ocean, talking to someone who wasn't there. The rescue helicopter found only 2 survivors. But I swear, there were 3 of us fighting to stay alive. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 29 years old, and this is the story of how I survived 3 days in the Pacific Ocean after our plane crashed. What I'm about to tell you will challenge everything you believe about life, death, and love. Please subscribe to this channel so this story can reach more people. I adjusted Tommy's Mickey Mouse backpack one more time as the December morning sun painted Sydney Airport in golden hues. Christmas decorations sparkled everywhere, filling me with that festive magic that makes everything seem possible. My 3-year-old pressed his small face against the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching planes taxi across the tarmac, his breath fogging up the glass in excited puffs. "Look, Mommy. Big bird," he squealed, pointing at our Cessna 402 twin-engine aircraft. The plane gleamed white under the morning sun, with navy blue stripes running along its fuselage. It was smaller than I'd expected, but Mark had assured me it was perfect for our family getaway to Hamilton Island. "The pilot's name is Captain Rodriguez," my husband had said the night before. 20 years of experience, impeccable safety record. Those words had calmed my nerves about flying in such a small aircraft. Mark appeared beside us, carrying our weekend bags with the effortless strength that came from years as a firefighter with NSW Fire and Rescue. His uniform was replaced today with the casual blue polo shirt and khaki shorts, but he still carried himself with that confident posture that always made me feel safe. "Ready for our adventure, buddy?" he asked Tommy, lifting him up so our son could get a better view. Watching Tommy's face light up made my heart swell. This was exactly what we needed. 3 days away from Sydney's chaos, away from Mark's demanding shifts, away from my deadlines at the marketing firm. As we walked across the tarmac, I felt Mark's calloused hand slip into mine. His wedding ring clinked softly against mine, a sound that had become as familiar as his heartbeat during our 5 years of marriage. "You nervous?" he asked, reading my expression the way he always could. The wind carried the scent of aviation fuel and the distant ocean. "A little," I admitted, but his thumb stroking across my knuckles immediately eased my anxiety. This was my Mark, my protector, my anchor, the man who ran into burning buildings while others ran out. Captain Rodriguez met us at the aircraft steps, a weathered man in his 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Beautiful day for flying," he said in his thick Australian accent. "We'll be taking off in about 10 minutes, flying northeast over the coast. Should be smooth sailing. Weather's looking perfect for the next few days." As he helped us aboard, I noticed how meticulously he checked every detail. The interior smelled of leather and that distinctive airplane scent, clean, mechanical, reassuring. Tommy bounced in his seat between Mark and me, chattering about clouds and birds while I felt that familiar flutter of excitement mixed with nervous anticipation. The first hour of flight was everything Captain Rodriguez had promised. Tommy's nose was glued to the window as we soared over the stunning Australian coastline. Below us, the Tasman Sea stretched endlessly, catching the sunlight like scattered diamonds. Mark pointed out landmarks to Tommy. "See that white line? That's the beach where Daddy and Mommy went on our first date." The cabin filled with that comfortable hum of twin engines and our quiet family chatter. Tommy had fallen asleep against Mark's shoulder, clutching his favorite toy kangaroo. Around 11:30 a.m., I noticed the first change. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the intercom, slightly more formal than before. "Folks, we're encountering some weather ahead. Nothing to worry about, just going to get a bit bumpy for a few minutes." Through the windscreen, I could see a wall of dark clouds approaching from the northeast, their edges churning with an ominous energy that made my stomach tighten. Mark squeezed my hand and gave me that reassuring smile that had gotten me through countless worries over the years. "Just turbulence, love. Rodriguez knows what he's doing." The first jolt hit us like a giant fist, throwing the plane sideways and jolting Tommy awake with a startled cry. Outside, what had been blue sky moments before was now an angry gray-green, with rain hammering against the windows in sheets. The plane bucked and rolled, and I could hear Captain Rodriguez speaking rapidly into his headset. urgent, clipped phrases I couldn't make out over the roar of wind and engines. Mark's training kicked in immediately. He positioned himself to shield Tommy and me, his firefighter instincts making him our human buffer against the chaos. Then came the sound I'll never forget, a grinding, metallic screech from somewhere in the aircraft's belly, followed by a sickening drop that left my stomach in my throat. The plane wasn't just shaking anymore. It was falling, spinning, and I could see Captain Rodriguez fighting the controls with everything he had. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Victor Hotel for November Golf declaring emergency." His voice cut through our screams, professional even in terror. "Complete engine failure, attempting water landing 15 nautical miles northeast of Fraser Island." The impact with the Pacific Ocean was like hitting concrete at 80 miles per hour. The last thing I remember clearly was Mark's body covering Tommy and me as the world exploded in crushing metal, rushing water, and my own scream echoing in the cabin. The fuselage cracked like an eggshell and icy seawater began pouring in through every gap. In those final seconds before consciousness left me, I felt Mark's hand gripping mine with desperate strength, and I heard him shouting something I couldn't understand over the chaos. Then everything went black, and the only sound was the ocean claiming what was left of our perfect family vacation. Well, that's the first sensation that crashed through my consciousness, bone-deep cold that seemed to come from everywhere at once. My eyes fluttered open to a world turned upside down. I was suspended in the aircraft's cabin, held by my seatbelt, with dark Pacific water rising steadily around my waist. The plane had settled at an angle nose down, with one wing completely submerged and the other jutting up toward a gray sky that seemed impossibly far away. "Tommy." The name ripped from my throat as panic flooded every nerve in my body. I twisted in my harness, searching frantically through the debris-filled water for any sign of my son. Pieces of luggage floated around me like grave markers. Tommy's Mickey Mouse backpack, waterlogged and deflated. Mark's travel kit split open with toiletries scattered like confetti. Then I saw him. Tommy's small form floating face up about 3 feet away, unconscious but breathing, his life jacket somehow inflated and keeping his head above the rising water. "Sarah." Mark's voice cut through my terror like a lifeline. I turned to see him struggling through the chest-deep water, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead but his eyes alert and focused. Even in crisis he moved with that firefighter efficiency I'd seen countless times, assessing, prioritizing, acting. He reached Tommy first, checking his pulse and breathing with practiced hands while keeping our son's head stable. "He's okay, love. Concussed but okay. We need to get out of here, she's going down fast." The water was rising with terrifying speed, already reaching the bottom of the windows. Mark worked quickly to free Tommy from his seat, then waded over to help me with my jammed seatbelt mechanism. His hands were steady despite the urgency, and when the buckle finally gave way, he caught me as I collapsed into the frigid water. "Can you swim?" he asked, his voice calm despite the chaos. When I nodded, he positioned Tommy between us. "There's a break in the fuselage near the wing. We go through there together. Don't let go of him no matter what." The swim to freedom felt eternal. The water was shockingly cold, and every stroke was a battle against the weight of our soaked clothes and the suction of the sinking aircraft. Mark guided us through the twisted metal opening, his body shielding us from the sharp edges. As we broke through to open ocean, I gasped at the vastness that surrounded us, nothing but rolling gray-green swells stretching to every horizon, with no sign of land, other aircraft, or rescue. Behind us, our Cessna groaned and bubbled as it began its final descent to the ocean floor, taking with it our luggage, our phones, our connection to the world we'd left just hours before. "There." Mark's shout cut through the sound of waves and my own panicked breathing. About 50 meters away, a large section of the aircraft's port wing floated on the surface, its aluminum skin gleaming dully in the overcast light. It was roughly 12 feet long and 6 feet wide, tilted at an angle that created a small platform above the waterline. "It's our best chance, Sarah. Can you make it?" The swim felt impossible with Tommy's limp weight between us, but Mark's presence gave me strength I didn't know I had. He swam with one arm, keeping our son's head above water while using powerful kicks to propel us forward. Every few strokes he'd call out encouragement. "You're doing great, love. Almost there. Tommy's going to be fine." When we finally reached the wing section, Mark boosted me up first, then carefully lifted Tommy's unconscious form into my arms before hauling himself up with a grunt of effort. The wing section was far from comfortable, but it was salvation. The aluminum surface was covered with a non-slip coating that provided some grip, and the slight upward angle meant we could position ourselves to stay mostly dry. Mark immediately began checking Tommy again, his firefighter training evident in every movement. "Pupils are reactive, breathing is steady, pulse is strong," he reported, more to himself than to me. He gently shook our son's shoulders. "Come on, buddy. Wake up for Daddy." Tommy's eyes fluttered open around 10 minutes later, focusing slowly on our faces. "Daddy?" he whispered, his voice small and confused. "Where's the plane? I want to go home." My heart broke and soared simultaneously. He was alive, conscious, speaking. Mark gathered him into his arms, and I saw tears mixing with seawater on my husband's face. "We're having an adventure, mate," Mark said softly. "A big adventure. And Daddy's going to keep you and Mommy safe until the rescue people come." As the afternoon wore on, our makeshift raft proved more stable than I'd feared. The wing's natural buoyancy kept us well above the waterline, and its size allowed us to spread out enough to avoid constant contact with the cold metal. Mark used his belt to create a small lip around the edge, preventing us from sliding off during larger swells. He positioned Tommy between us, using our bodies as windbreaks, and showed me how to cup and redirect the occasional splash of warmer surface water over our son's skin to prevent hypothermia. "Remember," he said in that authoritative tone from his firefighting days, "panic is our enemy. We stay calm, we stay smart, we stay alive." As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the ocean in shades of orange and pink that would have been beautiful under any other circumstances, Mark began preparing us for our first night at sea. "The temperature's going to drop," he explained, his voice matter-of-fact but gentle. "Body heat is everything now. We stay close, we stay dry as possible, and we take turns keeping watch." He'd already used strips torn from his shirt to tie us loosely to the wing section. Not tight enough to trap us if we needed to move quickly, but secure enough to prevent us from rolling off while sleeping. Tommy had been remarkably resilient throughout the afternoon, asking questions with the curiosity of a 3-year-old rather than showing fear. "Why is the water so big, Daddy? Where are all the fish? When are we going home?" Mark answered each question patiently, turning our survival situation into a story of adventure rather than disaster. He'd even managed to make a game of collecting the small pools of rainwater that gathered in the wing's rivets, teaching Tommy to cup his hands and drink slowly. "Just little sips, buddy. Like when you're tasting ice cream to see if you like the flavor." The sunset brought a clarity to our situation that daylight had somehow obscured. We were completely alone on an ocean that stretched beyond every horizon, with no sign of rescue aircraft, ships, or even floating debris. The silence was profound, just the gentle lapping of waves against aluminum and the occasional cry of a seabird overhead. Mark pulled me close as Tommy dozed between us, his small body finally succumbing to exhaustion. "Sarah," he whispered against my hair, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. If something happens to me," he continued, "if I get sick or injured, you need to know how to keep Tommy alive." His voice carried the weight of real possibility, not just theoretical preparation. "Keep him hydrated with rainwater only, never seawater, no matter how thirsty he gets. Keep his head covered during the day and keep him warm at night. Make noise if you see any aircraft. Bang on the metal, wave your arms, use anything reflective to signal." He paused, his hand finding mine in the growing darkness. "Promise me, Sarah. Promise me you'll never give up." The first night was brutal in ways I hadn't anticipated. The metal wing conducted cold directly into our bodies, and every wave that washed over our refuge brought a shock of freezing water. But worse than the physical discomfort was the psychological weight of our situation. In the darkness, surrounded by the vast indifference of the ocean, it was impossible to maintain the brave face we'd worn for Tommy during the day. I found myself crying silently against Mark's shoulder while he stroked my hair and whispered the same reassurances he'd given me during thunderstorms when we were dating. "I've got you, love. I've got you both. We're going to make it through this." The sunrise of our second day brought with it a gift I hadn't dared hope for, a light rain that began just as the first pink rays touched the horizon. Mark was already awake, having taken the last watch of the night, and he immediately began positioning our makeshift collection system. Using a torn piece of shirt fabric stretched between raised sections of the wing, he created a small funnel that directed the precious fresh water into the largest intact rivet hole in the aluminum surface. "Drink slowly," he instructed Tommy, who was watching the water collection with fascination. "Pretend you're a baby bird and Daddy is feeding you drops from his beak." Tommy giggled at the image, opening his mouth to catch the tiny stream of water that Mark carefully poured from our improvised reservoir. The rain lasted nearly 20 minutes, long enough for each of us to drink our fill and to collect almost half a liter of water in various small containers we'd fashioned from debris. As the morning progressed, Mark began teaching me what he called ocean survival basics, knowledge from his firefighter training and water rescue operations around Sydney Harbor. "See how the waves have a pattern?" He pointed to the rolling swells beneath us with hypnotic regularity. "That means we're in open ocean, probably at least 10 nautical miles from any shoreline. The good news is that rescue aircraft fly search patterns over deep water routes." He showed me how to read the sky for signs of aircraft, pointing out the difference between natural cloud formations and contrails that might indicate air traffic. "Commercial flights from Sydney to Queensland pass through this area," he explained, his hand shading his eyes as he scanned the heavens. "Tourist helicopters do scenic flights over the islands. Someone will be looking for us. Captain Rodriguez would have gotten off that Mayday call. And when we don't arrive at Hamilton Island, they'll start searching." By midday, the sun had become our enemy. Without any shade on the exposed wing surface, the aluminum grew hot enough to burn exposed skin, and the reflected light off the water was blinding. Mark used his knowledge of heat management to create what shade he could, positioning himself to block the worst rays from reaching Tommy's face and showing me how to wet our clothes with seawater for evaporative cooling. "Never drink it," he warned for the 100th time, "but we can use it for cooling. The salt will dry on our skin, but that's better than heat stroke." By the afternoon of our second day, the effects of dehydration and stress were beginning to show in ways that terrified me. Tommy had become listless, sleeping more than he was awake, and when he did speak, his words were sometimes confused. "Mommy, why is Grandpa waving from that cloud?" he asked at one point, pointing at an empty patch of sky. Mark and I exchanged worried glances, but he handled it with his usual calm professionalism. "Sometimes when we're very tired, our eyes play tricks on us," Mark explained gently to Tommy. "It's like when you're almost asleep and you think you see monsters in your closet, but they're really just your clothes hanging up." He caught my eye over Tommy's head, and I could see the concern there despite his steady voice. I knew that hallucinations could be an early sign of severe dehydration, and our water collection from the morning rain wouldn't last much longer. As the day wore on, I began experiencing my own distortions. The horizon seemed to shimmer with buildings that vanished when I tried to focus on them. Twice I was certain I heard the sound of helicopter rotors, only to realize it was just the rhythm of waves against our wing section. Mark remained the most lucid of the three of us, constantly checking our position relative to the sun, monitoring our water supply, and maintaining what he called our signal readiness, keeping reflective surfaces polished and positioned for maximum visibility to any aircraft. "Sarah," he said as the sun began its descent toward the horizon again, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully." His voice carried a weight that made my stomach clench with dread. "If I start showing signs of confusion or if something happens to me, you need to take charge. Tommy's depending on both of us, but ultimately he's depending on you." He pulled me close, his lips against my ear so our son wouldn't hear. "I love you more than life itself, but if it comes down to a choice, you save him. Do you understand me?" That second night was worse than the first in every way. The temperature seemed to drop more dramatically, and despite our best efforts to stay warm, all three of us were showing signs of hypothermia. Tommy's lips had taken on a blue tinge, and Mark's hands were shaking when he thought I wasn't looking. But worse than the cold was the growing realization that rescue might not come in time. We'd been missing for almost 48 hours, and while Mark insisted that search teams would be working around the clock, the vastness of the ocean around us made our tiny wing section feel like a speck of dust in infinite darkness. The third dawn brought no rain, no aircraft, and no hope on any horizon. Tommy was barely conscious, his small body conserving energy by shutting down everything non-essential. Mark had to check his pulse every few minutes to reassure himself that our son was still fighting. "His body's doing what it's supposed to do," he told me, but I could hear the strain in his voice. "Children are more resilient than adults. He's going to make it, Sarah. We all are." But I could see that Mark himself was fading. The confident firefighter who'd taken charge of our survival was moving more slowly, forgetting things he'd remembered perfectly the day before. When he tried to check our water supply, he stared at the empty containers for a long moment as if he couldn't remember what they were for. "Mark." I touched his shoulder gently. "Are you okay?" He blinked, focused on my face, and gave me that familiar reassuring smile, but it took effort now. "I'm fine, love," he said, but his voice was hoarser than it had been, and when he moved to adjust Tommy's position, I noticed he favored his left side as if something hurt internally. "Just tired. We're all tired." He spent the morning teaching me things he'd never mentioned before. How to perform basic first aid, how to make distress signals, how to keep Tommy's airway clear if he became unconscious. It felt like he was preparing me for something he didn't want to say out loud. Around midday, Mark spotted something that sent a surge of adrenaline through all of us. A distant speck in the sky that might have been an aircraft. "There," he pointed, his voice stronger than it had been all morning. "Sarah, get the metal polished. Tommy, wave your arms like we practiced." We all worked frantically to create the most visible signal possible, using torn fabric, reflective metal, and our own bodies to try to catch the attention of what we prayed was a rescue aircraft. For 10 minutes, hope flooded through us like a drug. But the speck disappeared into the haze without changing course, without circling back, without any sign that they'd seen our desperate signals. The crushing disappointment was almost worse than no hope at all. Tommy began crying for the first time since the crash, great heaving sobs that seemed to drain what little energy he had left. Mark gathered him close, but I could see that my husband was crying too, tears mixing with the salt spray on his weathered cheeks. "It's okay," he whispered to both of us. "It's okay. That means aircraft are in the area. The next one will see us. The next one will see us for sure." As the afternoon heat became unbearable on our third day, something strange began to happen. Mark, who had been growing weaker and more confused throughout the morning, suddenly seemed to find new strength and clarity. He sat up straighter, his voice became firm and authoritative again, and he began giving me detailed instructions about survival techniques I'd never heard him mention before. "Sarah, listen to me carefully. When they find us, Tommy's going to need immediate medical attention for dehydration. Tell the rescue team that he's been unconscious on and off, that his last lucid conversation was this morning, and that he's had small amounts of fresh water but no food for 3 days," he continued, his eyes more focused than they'd been since the crash. "They'll need to start N4 immediately, but they have to be careful about rehydration shock. His little body can't handle too much fluid too fast." The medical knowledge was accurate and detailed, far beyond what I'd expected from his firefighter training. Throughout the afternoon, Mark seemed to anticipate my needs before I even realized them myself. When the sun reached its most brutal angle, he somehow found energy to create better shade using debris I hadn't noticed before. When Tommy stirred and seemed distressed, Mark was there immediately with comfort and care. When I felt myself beginning to panic about our situation, he pulled me close and spoke with a calm certainty that felt almost supernatural. "You're stronger than you know, Sarah. Stronger than you've ever imagined. I need you to make me a promise," he said as the sun began its descent toward the horizon for the third time. "When we get rescued, and we will get rescued, I need you to tell Tommy about this adventure every year on his birthday. Tell him how brave he was, how he never gave up, how proud his daddy was of him." There was something in his tone that made me look at him more carefully. Despite his renewed strength, There was a translucent quality to his skin, and his breathing seemed more labored than before. As the golden hour light painted our wing section in warm hues, Mark did something that surprised me. He began talking about our future in vivid detail. The house we'd buy when his next promotion came through, the vacation we'd take to New Zealand for our 10th anniversary, the way Tommy would tell this story to his own children someday. His words painted pictures so real I could almost see them, and for the first time in 3 days I felt genuine hope. "You see it, don't you?" he asked, his hand squeezing mine. "You can see our whole life ahead of us. It's going to be beautiful, Sarah. More beautiful than we ever imagined." The rhythmic thump-thump-thump of helicopter rotors cut through the morning air of our 4th day like the most beautiful music I'd ever heard. Mark was on his feet instantly, more energetic than I'd seen him since the crash, waving a piece of reflective metal with practiced precision. "There!" he shouted over the growing noise. "They see us. Sarah, they see us." The orange and white rescue helicopter was approaching from the northeast, its flight pattern deliberate and focused directly on our position. Tommy stirred in my arms as the downdraft from the helicopter's rotors began churning the water around our wing section. "Mommy, what's that noise?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the mechanical thunder above us. "It's our ride home, baby," I told him, tears streaming down my face as I watched the rescue basket being lowered from the aircraft. Mark was directing my attention to the rescue protocol, shouting instructions over the noise. "Tommy goes first, then you, then me. Tell them about his dehydration symptoms." The rescue swimmer who descended with the basket was a young man with the NSW ambulance service. His movements efficient and professional as he assessed our condition. "Day folks, I'm Paramedic Johnson. How are we feeling?" His voice was reassuring and calm as he quickly checked Tommy's vital signs. "The little one's dehydrated but stable. We'll have you all up and safe in just a few minutes." As he secured Tommy in the rescue basket, I felt a relief so profound it made me dizzy. "Your turn, ma'am," Johnson said as the basket came down for the second time. As I was being strapped in, I looked back at Mark, who was standing at the edge of our makeshift raft, waving and smiling. The expression on his face was one of pure joy and satisfaction, as if he'd just completed the most important job of his life. "See you at the top, love," he called out, and I felt that familiar warmth of his confidence surrounding me as the winch lifted me toward safety. But as the basket reached the helicopter's door and hands pulled me inside, I heard something that made my blood freeze. "Right?" Johnson's voice crackled through his radio to the pilot. "That's both survivors aboard. Let's head to base." I twisted in my restraints, looking down at our wing section where Mark was still standing, still waving. "Wait!" I screamed over the rotors. "There's one more. My husband is still down there." The crew exchanged glances that I couldn't interpret, and Johnson began preparing his equipment to descend again. "What are his details, ma'am?" Johnson asked as he prepared to rappel back down to our wing section. The helicopter hovered steady as a rock while I frantically described Mark. His height, his weight, his blue polo shirt, the cut on his forehead from the crash. "Mark Mitchell, 31 years old, NSW Fire and Rescue," I shouted over the rotors. "He's right there. Can't you see him waving?" I pointed down at the wing section, where I could clearly see Mark's figure against the aluminum surface. Johnson followed my gaze, then looked back at me with an expression that sent ice through my veins. He spoke quickly into his headset, words I couldn't make out over the noise, then returned to securing his rappelling gear. "We'll get him, ma'am. Don't worry." But there was something in his voice that didn't match his reassuring words, something that made the other crew members look at each other with grim understanding. As Johnson descended toward the wing section, I pressed my face to the helicopter's window, watching his every movement. He landed on the aluminum surface and began a thorough search, checking every corner, every crevice, every piece of debris. From my vantage point above, I could see Mark clearly, standing just a few feet from where Johnson was searching, waving his arms to get the rescuers' attention. "He's right there," I screamed, beating on the window. "He's standing right next to you." Johnson spent nearly 10 minutes on the wing section, collecting pieces of debris and photographing the area, but he never approached the spot where Mark was standing. Finally, he signaled to be lifted back up, his face grim as he ascended. When he reached the helicopter, he removed his helmet and looked at me with eyes full of compassion and something else. Something that looked like pity. "Ma'am," he said gently, "there's nobody down there. You and your son were the only survivors we found." The words hit me like a physical blow. "That's impossible," I whispered, then louder. "That's impossible." He was there. He talked to me all night. He taught me how to collect water, how to signal aircraft, how to keep Tommy alive. Johnson knelt beside me as the helicopter banked toward shore, his voice gentle but firm. "Ma'am, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully. According to the passenger manifest and the preliminary crash investigation, Mark Mitchell was found deceased in the aircraft wreckage yesterday morning. I'm sorry, but your husband didn't survive the initial impact." I sat in the family consultation room at Cairns Base Hospital, still wrapped in the thin emergency blanket they'd given me in the helicopter. The antiseptic smell filled my nostrils as Tommy slept peacefully in the pediatric ward, properly hydrated and monitored, his small body already showing childhood's resilience. But my world had been shattered by words that couldn't possibly be true, couldn't possibly reconcile with 3 days of vivid, detailed memories. Dr. Patricia Hawkins, the hospital's chief psychiatrist, sat across from me with gentle professionalism that told me she'd delivered devastating news before. "Sarah, what you experienced is called a grief-induced hallucination. It's more common than you might think in extreme survival situations, especially when someone loses a loved one suddenly and traumatically. Your mind created Mark's presence as a coping mechanism to help you survive." "But he knew things," I protested, my voice hoarse from crying. "Medical things about dehydration, survival techniques I'd never heard of, weather patterns over the Pacific. How could I hallucinate knowledge I didn't have?" Dr. Hawkins leaned forward, her expression compassionate but firm. "You'd be surprised what your subconscious mind retains. Conversations you overheard during Mark's training, medical dramas you watched together, articles you read but didn't consciously remember. In a crisis, your brain assembled all of that information and presented it through the comforting image of your husband." The crash investigation report lay open on the table between us, filled with technical details that painted a picture I couldn't accept. "Impact damage to the passenger compartment was catastrophic," the report stated. "Mark Mitchell, 31, sustained fatal injuries consistent with the aircraft's collision with the water surface. His body was recovered from the wreckage site by divers approximately 18 hours after the crash was reported. The photographs showed our Cessna resting on the ocean floor, its cabin crushed. The recovery team found evidence that you and Tommy escaped through a breach in the fuselage," Dr. Hawkins continued, pointing to diagrams in the report. "You managed to reach the floating wing section and survived there for 3 days before rescue. Sarah, what you accomplished was extraordinary. You saved your son's life and your own through incredible strength and determination." But her words felt hollow against the vivid reality of Mark's presence during those 3 days, the weight of his hand in mine, the sound of his voice guiding me through our darkest hours. "I want to show you something," Dr. Hawkins said, opening a laptop on the consultation room table. "These are satellite images from the search and rescue operation, taken every 6 hours during your time at sea. The images showed our wing section floating in the vast Pacific, a tiny speck surrounded by endless blue. In each photograph, 2 figures were clearly visible on the metal surface. One large, one small. Never 3. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable, but it felt like looking at photographs of someone else's experience. Heat stroke, dehydration, and extreme stress can create hallucinations that are completely indistinguishable from reality," Dr. Hawkins explained. "Your brain was protecting you from the full trauma of Mark's death by maintaining his presence until you were safe. It's actually a testament to the power of your love for each other and your determination to survive." She showed me medical studies of other survival situations where similar phenomena had occurred. Shipwreck survivors who conversed with deceased family members, lost hikers guided by dead relatives, plane crash victims who received comfort from loved ones who hadn't survived. The human mind has remarkable protective mechanisms, she continued. When reality becomes too overwhelming to process, our brains create alternative narratives that allow us to function and survive. But it felt so real, I whispered, touching the space on my left hand where Mark's wedding ring had pressed against mine during those long nights at sea. Every word he said, every touch, every moment of comfort. How can something that real be just in my mind? Dr. Hawkins reached across the table and took my hand in hers. Sarah, the comfort you felt was real. The strength you found was real. The knowledge that saved your life and Tommy's life, that came from inside you. Mark may not have been physically there, but in every way that mattered, his love was present and protecting you both. 3 weeks after our rescue, I stood in the cemetery overlooking Sydney Harbor, holding Tommy's small hand as we faced the reality that Mark would never come home. The funeral had been a blur of firefighter uniforms, bagpipes, and condolences from people who knew my husband as a hero long before he became mine. Tommy, still too young to fully understand death, kept asking when Daddy would be done sleeping and come home to play with him. The media attention had been overwhelming. Miracle Mother and Son survived 3 days at sea read the headlines, but none of the articles captured the complexity of what had really happened out there. Reporters wanted to know about my survival instincts and maternal strength. But how could I explain that I'd been guided through every crucial decision by a man who wasn't really there? How could I tell them that my greatest source of comfort during our ordeal had been an elaborate hallucination? Dr. Hawkins had warned me that returning to normal life would be challenging. Survivor's guilt is common, she'd explained, especially when you're dealing with the additional complexity of grief-induced hallucinations. You may feel like you somehow betrayed Mark by experiencing his presence when he was already gone. He was right. Every night when I closed my eyes, I could still feel the weight of his body next to mine on that aluminum wing, could still hear his voice whispering reassurances in my ear. Tommy's adjustment was different but equally heartbreaking. He would sometimes ask me to call Daddy to come help with something difficult, or wonder aloud why Daddy wasn't at his bedtime stories anymore. The child psychologist assured me that his memories of the survival experience were fragmented and dreamlike, which was probably a blessing. He remembered being cold and scared, but he also remembered feeling safe because Mommy and Daddy were both taking care of me. The insurance settlements and media interviews provided financial security, but they couldn't fill the silence in our house or the empty space in our bed. Mark's fire station colleagues had been incredibly supportive, bringing meals and offering to help with repairs or childcare, but their kindness only emphasized the magnitude of what we'd lost. Captain Henderson, Mark's commanding officer, visited regularly and always said the same thing. Mark was the kind of man who would find a way to protect his family even from beyond the grave. 1 year later, I returned to the crash site on a chartered boat with Tommy, now 4 and asking endless questions about the big adventure we'd had together. The Pacific Ocean looked different in the calm afternoon light, peaceful rather than threatening, blue instead of that ominous gray-green I remembered from our ordeal. The captain had located the approximate area where we drifted, though the wing section had long since been recovered by investigators. Was this where we saw Daddy? Tommy asked, pointing at the water with the matter-of-fact curiosity of a child. I'd been dreading this question for months, knowing that someday I'd have to decide what version of events to share with my son. Yes, sweetheart, I said finally. This is where Daddy helped us stay brave until the helicopter came. It wasn't a lie, exactly. It was the truth as we had experienced it, regardless of what the medical reports and crash investigators might say. Standing on the boat's deck, watching the endless horizon where we'd once floated between life and death, I found myself thinking about the nature of reality itself. Does it matter whether Mark was really there if his presence saved our lives? Does it matter whether my hallucination was scientifically explainable if it gave me the strength to keep Tommy alive? Dr. Hawkins had said that grief and love can manifest in ways that transcend our understanding of what's possible. I miss Daddy, Tommy said, leaning against my legs as we watched the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and pink. But I think he still helps us sometimes, doesn't he, Mommy? I wrapped my arms around my son and thought about all the moments over the past year when I'd felt Mark's presence. A sudden calm during Tommy's nightmares, an inexplicable knowledge of exactly what to do during parenting challenges, a warm feeling of protection during our darkest moments of grief. "Yes, baby," I whispered into his hair. "Daddy still helps us. He'll always help us." And as I spoke those words, I realized they were absolutely true, regardless of what science or logic might say about hallucinations and grief responses. Love doesn't die with the body. Love finds a way to persist, to protect, to guide us through the impossible moments when we think we can't survive another day. Mark had saved us in that helicopter, saved us during 3 days on a floating wing section, and he was saving us still, every single day in ways both mysterious and utterly real. As our boat headed back toward shore, I pulled out the journal I'd been keeping since our rescue, the one Dr. Hawkins had recommended for processing my trauma. Tonight's entry would be simple. We went back to the place where miracles happen, where love proves stronger than death, where a husband and father kept his promise to protect his family no matter what. Tommy and I are going to be okay. We're going to be more than okay. And somewhere, in whatever realm exists beyond our understanding, Mark knows that his job is complete. I am Sarah Mitchell, and this is how I survived.